Okay, let's talk TSA, the Thinking Skills Assessment, the entrance exam for Oxbridge, Oxford University and Cambridge for PPE. If it's coming up and you're feeling nervous, here are some tips that I think you should keep in mind, some ideas for practicing and how to sharpen your craft and to improve your skill with the TSA. I've been tutoring and coaching people through the TSA for several years now. I have a very high success rate. I get my students going from unconfident, a bit shaky on their feet, writing mediocre answers, to writing very astute, nuanced, compelling answers for the paper 2. And this video is going to be talking about paper 2 specifically because it's its own beast really, isn't it? The 30-minute, high-pressure essay paper. The thing is, as an Oxford student studying English, essays and essays under timed conditions always sort of came naturally to me, but I was forced to sharpen my skills and bring them up and bring up my lagging parts and really figure out what makes a perfect essay tick. It's my area of expertise, it's my passion, it's my love. I love teaching people how to do that, but I understand, having taught hundreds of students, that the essay part of the TSA is actually the most anxiety inducing, or for 80% of people. It's kind of split. You're either quite comfortable with one paper and not with the other, and I find that people with the logic-based paper 1 are a bit more confident, and they're a bit more confident with the multiple choice and things like that, and there's many books that can assess that and show you how to think in that way. It's the essay paper that has a bit more nuance and ambiguity, and people are a bit confused. So I've put together an entire course for getting you through the paper 2 of the TSA, the crash course, a sort of little masterclass where for a few hours we drill down and we teach you how to examine underlying assumptions. But hey, if you haven't got that long, let's just get into a few quick tips now. Now, the first thing I want to advise you to do is to have your outline ready to go, preloaded in your mind. You do not have enough time to create an outline from scratch when you get into the paper. You don't have time to be creative. You don't have time to waffle or figure out what you should be doing or what sort of structure you should be following. Now, here's the thing. You do need an outline and you do need a structure to work from. You absolutely 100% do not just want to wing it, read the question once and start writing. Please don't do that. What happens when you do that? You end up waffling, and if you ever do make a pertinent point, it's only by the final paragraph, right by the end, when you finally get into the groove of things. Don't do that. You need to measure twice, cut once. That means planning. But having said that, you don't want to be starting from scratch when you get into the exam hall. You want to know what your outline is going to look like. Now, here's an example, a little recommendation, a little template, and in the course we go a bit deeper into this, but have a 3-point system. 3-point system means when you read the question, and my recommendation is you read it 3 times, you read it once quickly when you're reading it in the context of the other ones, to get a sense of which one you want to go for, which one calls to you and speaks to you, and then you're going to read it with a fine-tooth comb, and then you're going to read it again. Now, you want to, when you're answering the questions, my recommendation is you have 3 points. Okay, so if you're arguing yes, all right, you're going to argue in the positive to the question. You want yes, no, counter-argument, yes again, strengthen your argument. Or if it's exploratory, and that's absolutely fine, you just explore 3 points relating to the question. 3 points takes up 3 paragraphs. So when you're brainstorming an outline, you know point, 1, 2, 3. You just have to slot those in, okay? Now, the structure breaks down a bit further, and this is very rudimentary and it's very basic, but a lot of people resist this. Again, they want to be creative. I wanted to be creative as well. I remember I resisted this formula for years. I thought I could just wing it on myself. No. Once you follow this formula, you can have creativity within the confines of a structure. That's why you have a structure. Point, example, explanation. All right, you establish a point, that's a sentence. You give an example, that's 1 or 2 sentences. You elaborate and expand, 2 or 3 sentences. Okay, there's no room for creativity, that's your structure. And once you've got that in your head, and obviously you go practice it over and over and over and over again, and that's how you get confident, then you're going to go into the essay, and the planning isn't going to take you that long, but you must do it. Okay, so plan, but know how you're going to plan. Have an attack plan for how you're planning, basically. Now, another thing you want to do in your practice is practice writing from the other side. Now, too often we see a question and we immediately know what our gut says. So, oh, I really, really strongly believe this. Thing is, your opinions should change over time. Politics changes, how you view spirituality changes, how you interact in the world changes, everything changes. Now, to strengthen your argumentative skills, you need to practice seeing things from the other side. You feel very strongly about a question. Try and practice seeing it from the other side as strongly. What does this do? It makes your argument more compelling, because when you come back to argue yes in the affirmative or the positive or the negative. You've seen the other side, and then having a counter argument that you then refute strengthens your original argument. Okay? Now, another piece of advice, and this is really, really core, this is really, really key, this is fundamental. If you take one thing away from this, please take this away. Stick close to that question. Some people see a question and they think, oh, great, this is about animal rights, or this is about statistics, or this is about medicine. I know a little bit about medicine. I read something about medicine the other day. And you already have things that you want to talk about. And then before you know it, you've gone off the beaten path and you're not actually answering the question. You need to be looking at that question every couple of seconds. When you're planning, point 1, look at the question. Point 2, look at the question. Point 3, look at the question. Now go back over it. Does your point actually answer that? Does it actually answer that? Be strict with yourself. You might kid yourself and go, well, it kind of does. It's a good point. It's interesting. Does it answer it? You want to stick as close to that question and the terms and conditions and the definitions and the keywords as possible. How do you know you're sticking close to the question? You are repeating the keywords, the things that are embedded in the question over and over and over again. It seems tedious, it seems boring, doesn't seem creative. That's what they want to see. There is room for creativity. The creativity comes in your ability to argue, in your ability to present compelling ideas that perhaps other people might not have thought, or put different opposing ideas together. It doesn't come in the fact that you might not answer the question. Don't be a politician. I know you might be studying to be a politician. Don't be a politician right now. Stick to the question, answer it, and be as boring as possible, but stick to that question and keep reiterating what they're asking you in your answer. That's super important. Now, another thing you want to do is define. Define. This is what examining underlying assumptions is all about. You take a keyword in the question and you pick it apart. Because here's the thing. We see all these big words, these abstract concepts. Money, capitalism, democracy, liberty, freedom, whatever. And we all have an idea of what that means. But we're all different people. We all have different cultural paradigms. We all have different upbringings, and we've all been raised differently. We've all been exposed to different media, read different books, interacted with different people. So when I say democracy, it is at least a little bit different from what you think democracy is. And sometimes there is a gulf between our understanding of that word, and we don't even know it. And this is why people argue, and this is why people get into arguments, because they're actually not having the same conversation. Most people seek to be understood before they seek to understand other people. But you must flip it on its head and seek to understand. And how do you seek to understand? You tear things apart. You break it down. Capitalism means this. I'm assuming capitalism means this. This is my assumption. This is another potential assumption. We are working on the basis of these two assumptions to get to this. And once we get to this, there's a couple more assumptions that we need to grant, okay? This is like a Socratic dialogue method, right? Harping back to Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, right? If you read the Republic, how they do it, they go, right, can we all agree that X, Y, and Z means X, Y, and Z? Yes, Socrates. Fantastic. Then can we agree that because we've agreed to that this next thing is true? And everyone goes, yes. And of course, sometimes you're reading Plato and you're screaming, you go, no, I don't agree with that. But hey, at least they're defining their terms and they're establishing their assumptions. You have to start somewhere. That's what they want you to do. Even if the place that you end up at is crazy, ludicrous, doesn't make any sense. They will give you so much credit if you've done the hard work of establishing and examining your underlying assumptions. That's what this paper is all about, really. So let's look at a couple of examples of papers really quickly, so you can look at the thought process that goes on in my mind when I see a question. Now, these are the questions that we go deeper into in the video course, but let's have a little quick look at them now. Right, this question here. Could somebody choose to change their race? Now, how do you examine underlying assumptions here? How do you pick apart your definitions? Now, what you could do, and this is what goes on in my mind, you go word by word. Could. Okay? Could. What does that imply? If the question said should, then you have a more overt moral choice. Should. Then that means a different answer. Should implies moral judgment. It implies, a code of ethics. Could sort of implies that, but it also has a sort of practicality baked into it. So not only are we saying the moral Not only are we going down the moral route, but we're going down the practicality. Like, could it actually happen? So then you have to start to think two things. Well, practicality, science, like actual technology and transformation. And then not only could, but then you have to pick apart what race actually means. Like if you are born one race and you do successfully change into another race. Remember, this is all thought experiments. This is all what if. It's all going down rabbit holes. Just say you did, and on the surface you looked like a completely different race. Are you still the other race? So that's when you go down to the last word, race. And you go, well, what is race? What do we mean when we talk about race? Is it where you're born? Is it your heritage? Is it your blood? Or is it the land that you're born on? Is it your passport? Is it your culture? Like, if I'm a white man and I come from Irish stock all the way back thousands of years, but I was born on Japanese soil and I speak Japanese, I don't speak English, and I have all the Japanese customs. What then? This is the sort of thought process that you go into. And then choose, okay? So start thinking of words, look at words that might not immediately leap out at you. Like for most people, race would leap out immediately, and then maybe could would leap out if you're thinking hard. But choose. We can go down another rabbit hole. Do we really have freedom of choice? We can talk about fatalism versus determinism. We could talk about, do we have free will? That's a really interesting topic. I mean, some people believe that we don't have free will, but if we were to act and believe as though we did have free will, we'd be happier. So then it's like, are we talking about happiness here? No, scale it back. Okay, that's one example. And we'll go a lot deeper in the course, but let's look at another question, all right? Is reducing inequality always a good thing? So immediately, you have to define inequality. What is inequality? And often you define things by the opposite, don't you? So first you have to establish, well, what does equality look like? And then you start thinking, well, could you ever have equality? Is inequality always present? Different rabbit hole. Then you start talking about reduction. And when you talk about reducing something, you have to start thinking about measurements. And you have to start thinking, well, systems of measurement. Because you know, it's like the Peter Drucker thing. What gets measured gets managed. Is it always a good thing? And then you start thinking always. Well, you could extrapolate and start thinking, well, you know, in certain instances, even in most instances, even in almost every single instance, it's a good thing. But not everything, even things that are on the surface morally good, even on the things that look good or are healthy, they can't always be good, can they? Always is very, very hard. It's like, that's a really, really strong thing. It's like when someone says forever. It's like the virtues. If you go back to Aristotle's virtues, the medium between two extremes, deficit and excess. It's like, is, you know, courageous, what looks like a courageous act, is that always a good thing? No, nothing is always. There's a lot of art rather than science. So you start thinking about that. And then you start thinking about good. Good thing? Are we talking morally here? Are we talking health-wise? Are we talking psychologically? There are so many avenues to go down when you stick close to the question. That's why do not get away from the question. There is so much gold buried in the question that you should just stick as close to it as possible and you've got your essay answered. Let's do one more. Should convicted criminals be allowed to vote? There we go. Not could, should. Now this is moral choice, isn't it? And we talk about what is a criminal. Well, a criminal isn't just a static being, is it? It's not just bad person. There are different layers of criminality, and with different laws being imposed all of the time, some of them repealed because they're unjust. There's many laws that have been completely prejudiced, historically speaking. We know this. It's only recently that certain laws in regards to sexuality and race have become a bit more balanced, a bit more fair. So you start to think, well, someone could be a convicted criminal, but that doesn't inherently make them a bad person. You could also be wrongly convicted. You know, this is why a lot of people argue against the death penalty, because the instances of people sent to the chair wrongly is too high for most people. And that goes against what some people believe the justice system should be all about and set up to do. So you start to think about that, and you start to think about conviction, criminality. What does that mean? Be allowed to vote. Then you start breaking down, well, who's currently allowed to vote? Who wasn't allowed to vote before? Who stopped them voting? What's the voting system look like now? There's a lot of controversy over the US voting system right now. And then this is tied into this idea of democracy, democratic votes. What's the voting system look like now? Does it need a rehaul? What would it look like if criminals weren't allowed? What would it look like if they were allowed? Okay, what kind of world would we be living in? This is what happens when you stick close to the question. Okay. Now, another thing I want you to keep in mind is a good argument is balanced. I hit upon it just a moment ago, but I want to hit upon it again. Balance your argument. Always try and see things from the other point of view. This is really, really important. And when you're seeing things from the other point of view, make sure that you unpick the meanings and the assumptions and the terms and the conditions that argument will then be using. Okay? There's two things to keep in mind when you're reading a question and when you're answering it. One, what is being said? Two, how is it being said? Actually say this to yourself. Talk to yourself in your mind and go, use your own name even, and go, hey, Ben, what is being said here? And then explain it like I'm 5, or explain it like someone who doesn't know anything. Oh, well, this is, what's being said here is da-da-da-da-da-da. They're saying da-da-da-da-da. They're asking da-da-da-da-da. And how is it being said? What are the terms? Boom, 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 keywords, okay? Underline them or circle them, whatever, highlight them and go, that's the keyword, that's the keyword, that's the keyword. So I'm going to pick apart this, pick apart this, pick apart this. Before you know it, you have a structure coming together, okay? Now, another piece of advice is I want you to try to know a bit about a lot, okay? A lot of people, they have their interests and they have their specialities and they deep dive in certain areas. And that's why you can go off the beaten path because, like I said, if you see something about medicine, oh, I know something about medicine. I know a lot about this one thing, but they might not be asking you that. Okay, so know a bit about a lot. What does that mean? That means watch debate shows. Watch shows where they go through the news and there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 topics of debate and they have a panel and people are different arguments. Read a lot of different books from all realms, all genres. Read a lot of different magazines, opinion piece magazines. Read The Spectator, New York Times, Harper's Magazine. These are all periodicals from different parts of the political spectrum. Really good. Read the left-wing papers, read the right-wing papers, and be endlessly curious. TED Talks? You should be watching at least one of those a day. And what you'll find is this is a habit that Oxbridge students, they get into and they can't shake it. And in their downtime at Oxford, my friends they would eat their lunch in front of these TED Talks, and then we'd talk about it. Makes you know a bit about a lot, which is what you need for this, okay? So anyway, I don't want this video to be super long. Those are just a quick bird's eye view mindset tips to get you prepped for paper 2 for the TSA exam. If you want to go a bit deeper, please check out my video course. We're going to go over the criteria together. We're going to formulate a plan of attack. We're going to outline and brainstorm together. We're going to brainstorm endlessly. Lots and lots and lots of questions. I'm going to show you how to argue yes effectively, no effectively, how to counterbalance an argument. And then we're also going to do a paper under real timed conditions. You can see it. First, we're going to do a paper super slow and I'll be talking along my decisions and breaking it down along the way so you can really see insightfully the thought process and the analysis that's going on. And then we're going to do a paper, boom, hit the timer. And what we're going to do as well is you're going to have loads of homework. So if that sounds good to you, check out the video course and let me know. If you have any questions about the TSA, put them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. I wish you all the very best luck in the world. I'm sure you'll do a cracking job. You wouldn't be watching a video like this if you weren't trying to prepare fully for the video. So I applaud you. It's hard, but at the end of the day, just go into the exam, have fun, don't stress too much and try and give it the best crack you've got and have a blast. No, thank you very much for watching.